It is a beautiful day, and I am particularly grateful to be in community with you. When you think about it, in the fall, when we imagine what this spring would be like, if you were like me, I had my doubts that we would be in community. But what is so inspirational is that you're here, being part of this community for change. And so I first want to start by sharing my pronouns, he, him, and his, in recognition of the transgender community here at UCI, but throughout the country and the world. And we've started something over the past few years as a practice at our public programs. And that is to offer a land acknowledgement. And the land acknowledgement recognizes our presence on the ancestral and unceded land of the Gabrielinos and Juaneños Achaman Nation. UCI is a land-grant university. We owe our origins to a land grant program in the 19th century that founded our original campus at Berkeley, at UC Berkeley. It is vital for us to acknowledge and make visible UCI's relationship to Native peoples, to recognize the history of the land on which we not just stand, but the land on which we learn, discover, and work. And in so doing, to affirm the past, the present, and the future of the Gabrielinos and the Juaneños Achaman Nation here at UCI and the various campuses that comprise this university. And so this is a living narrative and serves as a call to action to all members of the UCI community. So I want to build on this land acknowledgement and thanking you for taking the time to join us today in building community to confront extremism. We have been very COVID conscious. You're well spaced. Many of you are using your optional masks. But we wanted to provide a spacious venue so you can feel comfortable, to hear inspiring talks from our faculty, from our students and our staff. And I want to repeat that. Our faculty, our students, and our staff. Because when it comes to confronting extremism, each of us can play a part, regardless of what we do here at UCI. These talks today represent a fascinating public learning session to engage each of us. In each of the 11 funded projects from a call for proposals over a year ago. And they're here to share their insights and their actions for helping us to regain important footing lost during our current pandemic. You'll recall that 2 years ago, we launched a call entitled Advancing Equity in the Age of COVID. In part because COVID exposed so much that was in plain sight that many people either chose not to see or ignored. We developed this call, Building Community to Confront Extremism, because we felt it imperative to build bridges between communities so that we can create a far more vibrant society here, but also in the many communities that we serve as a public research institution. Now, I'm particularly inspired, I am still inspired by H. Adam Harris for his stirring remarks that truly set the tone today for inviting openness. And that poem that he recited from Maya Angelou just reminds me that nearly 30 years ago, this very powerful message about inviting openness in the face of extreme ideologies and the need for actions to challenge them remains relevant to this day. Our Confronting Extremism program here at UCI was launched, believe it or not, in 2017. Now, what happened in 2017? I'm a historian, so this is something that I do for my occupation. But in 2017, Charlottesville was the site of a vicious demonstration of racist, anti-Semitic hate that led to the death of an individual, the injury of countless others, but a wake-up call, yet another wake-up call for this country. And what's particularly important to remember is the night before, protesters marched in public on a public research university campus. There couldn't be a more explicit provocation than that we needed to lean in, do something different. And for that reason, we did. And I want to give credit to an individual who played an indispensable role to launching our first Confronting Extremism program. And that's Professor Michelle Goodwin. That event is recorded, it lives on our website, but I just want to remind you who she engaged in a discussion with. Two giants of the civil rights movement and social justice movements. And they are Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr. and Rabbi Hillel Kadol. And what's important to remember is that Charlottesville served as a defining moment in America. And it proved to be a remarkably prescient title for our first event. Since that first program, we have brought substantive speakers to share insights in public forums. We funded 39 projects to examine the nature of and strategies to address extremism in society. Our work isn't done. Our work is by no means finished. We only have to look at the 35% rise in reported hate crimes and nearly a 70% increase in hate incidents in this county of 3 million people. It is a reminder how even though we're dealing with the pandemic, extremism causes another form of harm in our communities. It also further limits the opportunities to come together and support one another, further impeding justice efforts that could be spent addressing inequities so pronounced in our society. And so I want to invite you to enjoy the food and beverages while you're here from speakers who will engage us and educate us about headway that we can make to galvanize communities. We have presenters provide their insights in TED-style talks, which will give you a brief flavor of the pertinent issues that they want to bring to our attention. We hope that this piques your curiosity to learn more about these projects, and we will provide updates on our OIE webpage for your future reference. As you see in the program, we are ambitious but efficient and hope to have time at the end for some brief questions before closing our events. And in that spirit, I need to sort of move it along. I am pleased to introduce our first speakers, whose projects examine the inclusion of voices by working with community members to understand their experiences, as well as a systems perspective. I will introduce the speakers in ascending order and end with our first presenter. Socorro Cambero is a doctoral student on the project of Confronting Extremism through culturally responsive pedagogies in a STEM educator program. Her research in the School of Education focuses on improving the experiences of historically marginalized STEM teachers and processes to promote social justice orientations in STEM teachers. The project discussed today examines how we learn from their Latinx project participants about experiences with discrimination, racism, and resistance through family and community resilience. Before Mrs. Cabrero's presentation, Naomi Suji will present. Dr. Suji is an associate professor, in the Department of Criminology, Law and Society and Sociology. Her research examines the consequences of incarceration and other forms of criminal justice contact for individuals and their families. She presents on prison pandemic, centering incarcerated people's voices during COVID-19, where she and her colleagues examine the state of equity in California prisons during the current pandemic. We start these presentations with speaker Joseph Jenkins. He is a research associate at the UCI School of Education, where he is director since 2007 of the theater and writing project, Theater of Translation. He presents on Theater of Resilience, engaging UCI and local communities in collaborative writing and performance. This project examined mentoring as well as cultural development experiences among predominantly Latinx youth. And now please join me in welcoming Professor Jenkins.